Hi guys, hope everyone's well and welcome back to the Improvement Podcast. So today I'm going to touch on exercises I don't recommend. And the reason I'm going to make this episode is something I enjoy talking about, I think will be valuable to yourselves also. And the reason being is I won't just be like, that's rubbish, that's poor, don't do that. I'll try and give you the rationale behind why I'm deciding these movements might not be the best for you to do in the gym, and as a result you can use that thought process. You can use the rationale behind why I don't recommend an exercise, and use your own judgment on, will this exercise be a good movement for myself to do, or is it pretty poor? And yeah, just be able to gain the knowledge to pick what exercise may be good for you to perform. So yeah, that's the rationale behind it, and it's just a subject I enjoy talking about, and something I'm passionate about. So there are going to be some exceptions to it, which I'll probably touch on throughout, but a few of them are enjoyment. So if someone absolutely loves an exercise, like let's say I've got a client, they love doing an exercise I think's dreadful, but it makes a difference between them getting their sessions done and not going to the gym that day. Or maybe they're just starting out at the gym and other exercises are maybe a wee bit too daunting. So what is actually optimal for them isn't doing the exercise that I think's a really great exercise. It's just doing something. It's just being in the gym and doing something that's not gonna scare them away and make them feel quite intimidated and not want to be there basically. And there's also things like kit limitations that will affect it as well. For example, an exercise may not, let's say a barbell back squat, not that I think it's a bad exercise, but someone might have to do barbell back squats for their legs because they don't have any fancy leg machines in their gym, they don't have a leg press, so you might want to do that movement, but you might not think it's amazing on paper. But it's just an example of sometimes you don't have a great array of kit available or much exercises to choose from, so you might have to go for something else. And however, there's sometimes ways around picking these poor exercises, like maybe just knowing what exercises are potentially better and having that understanding and having that knowledge of what to do instead of a somewhat poor exercise, which I'll get to. So, in terms of the first exercise I'm going to touch on is the tricep kickback. So I'm not sure if people have seen the tricep kickback, but it's basically when you bend over, you've got a dumbbell in your hand, and you extend the dumbbell, and you're like in a row position type thing, but your elbows in line with your body, and you're just driving the dumbbell back. And I just think this is an exercise that's got no place in building muscle. The reason being is when we think about the exercise, when you've got your arm in that position, like you're maintaining the top of a row bent over, you're not going to be super stable because you're in a bent over position, probably not the comfiest position to maintain. It's going to require you to keep balance and use the muscles in your back in that position. And most importantly, or something that's even more of a issue with the movement, is because you've got to maintain that position with your arm, and it's going to be hard to maintain that position because you're using the muscles in your back to maintain your arm in line with your body during that whole exercise. And that's not something, well, you might be able to maintain that position, but it's like trying to train your tricep, but you're actually putting more stress on the muscles in your back. Or it's like you're trying to train your tricep, but the limiting factor is not your tricep. It's how much weight you can maintain in that position, because it's an awkward position to be in, bent over with your like elbow in line with your body. And also on top of that, when you're doing the exercise, you'll find when you are kicking it back, like when your dumbbell is right under your elbow, you've got no tension on your tricep there. You've got no weight being used by your tricep. As a result, it's not that effective in that position. And when it is effective is when your arm's straight. If anyone's ever done the movement before, it's really, really hard when your arm's straight. And that's also where your triceps are really weak. And what we want to do with exercises is make it match what our muscle can do. So we want it to be hard for the full range of motion, whereas on the tricep kickback, it's only hard when our arms straight when we can't use a lot of weight at all. So basically we're using very, very little weight, and during the exercise we're putting a little tension through our tricep, and when we are putting tension on it, it's only in like, let's say, a quarter of the exercise, where we don't actually build muscle base, because that works when your arm's straight, when you're squeezing your tricep, when you're fully shortening your tricep or contracting it. And in that position, that's not where we build muscle base. It's in mid and lengthened range, so when it's stretched, and in the middle portion, so in between those two, if that makes sense. So a much better alternative to a tricep kickback could just simply be using like a cable, a single arm cable extension. So simply holding onto the cable, you don't even need an attachment on it, and extending your arm. And during this, we'll have weight on our tricep through the full range of motion. We'll have our weight on the tricep at the top, middle, end of the exercise. We'll have it through literally all of it, making it a better option. As well as that, we won't be limited by our ability to be bent over, our ability to keep our elbow beside our body, because there's not going to be that weight from gravity in that position when we're standing up. It's just a bit comfortable, but easier to do as well. And like I said, there's tension on your triceps during the whole movement. And as well as that, when you are doing it with what's it called? Yeah, when you're doing it with a cable, sometimes you see people doing it bent over with a cable, and having the cable around the height of their head, around the height of their shoulder, whereas you could just do it literally standing and put the cable higher. It is the exact same movement, except you don't have to be in that funny bent over position like you're doing a row and maintain that. You can just stand up straight and do it. So again, much better option standing up straight. You'll probably find you are a bit more stable on your feet. As a result, you can lift a bit more. You can be a bit stronger at it. Simple as that. And actually focus on using your tricep, not being in that funny position bent over. And next up, I'm going to touch on, tricep kickback is no go in my books. If you want an alternative, do it with a cable standing, or do just a rope cable extension. Or if you've only got dumbbells available, which is a good argument for using them, then an even better movement could be like a dumbbell skull crusher, or lying on a bench and being supported by a bench or on the floor, and then bending your elbow and doing, let's say, a skull crusher. You can see a lovely example if you're watching the video footage on YouTube, or you could do it like a cross your body single arm and support where your bicep is with your other hand, as you can see if you're watching it just like that. And that will be a better option again, because you'll have tension on your tricep through a larger percentage of the range of motion. You'll be a bit more stable and don't have to be in that funny bent over position. Next up, goblet squats. So somewhat a popular exercise you see people do in the gym, not an exercise I'm a fan of, and the reason being is there's not a lot of progressive runway in the movement. What I mean by this is, when you are doing a goblet squat, when you are in that position, when you're holding the weight in front of you, your legs are a lot stronger than your shoulders, a lot stronger than your grip, than your arms. So it doesn't make sense to do an exercise where you're holding the dumbbell in front of your body, because if you get even somewhat strong at a goblet squat, the limiting factor is going to be your grip. It's going to be holding the dumbbell in that position and not your legs. And it doesn't take an expert to suggest, and that might mean it's not a great exercise to train your legs if they're not the limiting factor. If we're not reaching failure with it or getting close to failure, then it's not going to be a movement that has a lot of value in it. And as well as that, it depends what you want to work. You could say it's not that bad an exercise to train your quads or that, but you could put a barbell on. You could do a front squat with a barbell, back squat with a barbell, and that would be a better alternative. Or using a leg press, a hack squat, any other leg machine really would probably be a better option. And like I did say at the start, there are some exceptions. So an exception to the goblet squat could be they can do a barbell squat. So what's a good way to ease into that barbell squat? What's a good way to make it a bit easier, a bit less daunting, and less skill requirement, and a bit easier to learn that squat movement, the squat pattern? A goblet squat. So again, if let's say, if, I don't think I do at the moment, but if any of my clients had the goblet squat in their program, don't cancel your coaching service, because there is reason behind it. It's like, again, it's a good way to build up to a barbell squat. So yeah, there is some utility in doing it in that aspect. But let's say you can barbell squat, you are experienced in the gym, you're not you don't find the barbell back squat daunting, you can do it comfortably with good form, or a front squat with a barbell, then I don't see any point in having that goblet squat in there. You could say, oh, but I stopped progressing my barbell back squat. I'd look to change the rep range and change the rep range team, change the tempo, or even put it to a front squat before even considering doing a goblet squat with it. So yeah, quite a poor exercise in my opinion, unless it's any of the exercise suggested. But like I said, if someone's brand new to going in the gym and they're easing into it, they find it quite daunting, or they're not skilled at a barbell squat, or they can't squat well, then you can still build muscle probably with a goblet squat. Yes, it's not going to be amazing, but it's something. It's like, if someone's not been even in the gym before, it's gonna be doing more than sitting on the couch, or doing more than never stepping foot in the gym. So that's something to consider as well when doing a goblet squat. And next up is sit-ups. So sit-ups, probably one if not the most popular core exercise or ab exercise, and something I do not see a ton of benefit on if you're somewhat experienced in the gym. The reason being is, again, a lack of progressive runway, meaning you're gonna struggle to progress it. Saying that, you could do that body weight. You could add weight and not just do it body weight. But when people do just sit ups like body weight, I don't think it's a great movement, because your feet come up. So a good alternative could be just hooking your feet under, and then your feet don't come up, and you can actually focus on using your core a bit better. But apart from that, when you are doing sit ups, a problem you can run into is being hard to progress them, because you can only do so much reps when you're doing sit-ups and progress it so much, and then it gets a bit difficult. So yeah, you can do them weighted. That could be a good option, but again, it might be a bit awkward holding the weight, getting the setup consistent, and making sure that it's the same week in, week out. You also lose tension on your abs at the top of the exercise, but saying that, for the large majority of it, you will have tension on your abs. So it's not the worst exercise, but a consideration could be, are you progressing your ab exercises like you are with any other exercise? Because if you are, when you're training your legs, you're progressing weight, you're trying to get stronger every week, or like you are with any other body part, but then you get to your abs and then you do some sort of fluffy exercise where you don't progress the weight, you don't keep log of how long you're doing it for, that sort of thing, then you aren't really going to be building much muscle in your abs, in my opinion. They should be treated like any other body part. So, so a good alternative could be doing them weighted, finding something to hook your feet under, so your feet coming up, or the amount of reps you can do isn't the limiting factor. And going on to the next, so you could also use like a ab crunch machine, or do a cable crunch as well, focusing on basically curving your back a lot at the bottom and stretching your abs at the top, taking them for a large range of motion as a result of it. Next up is standing presses. I don't see much benefit in. So by standing presses, I mean things like let's say a barbell overhead press, or a dumbbell overhead press, anything like that standing. You could say, if you're doing it single arm, you could say that's not a bad idea. I used to do it single arm just because one of my shoulders isn't as stable as the others, and I find it hard to balance with one. So that was to correct that instability in my shoulder, or the lack of balance in my shoulder, to put it simple. So that's for more of a specific purpose. But if you're looking to build muscle and you want to choose an exercise to build your shoulders, then I wouldn't choose a standing movement, because when we think about a standing movement, we are putting that weight through our whole body, which means we aren't as stable as if we're seated on a bench, if we're in a Smith machine, or if we are just doing our overhead press on a bench or with dumbbells. We're not going to be as stable if we're standing, because we've got more of our body that load is going through, making it quite hard to stabilize yourself, balance the weight, and as a result, that could potentially be the limiting factor. And even if not, it will affect how much you can lift, even if you can still reach, or what you think is reaching failure with it. So I'd always try and choose something seated if you can. There's also the point of when you're doing it, when you do like a standing overhead press, you're going to be arching your lower back. Not the end of the world, and could be a different scenario if it's a specific lift you love or want to improve. But for the most part, if you are doing it standing, you're going to have more load for your lower back, and then as a result, it's going to contribute towards that lower back loading, and it's going to load your lower back, which I'd recommend saving for doing things like bent over rows, things like leg exercises like a Romanian deadlift, a barbell back squat, and sit on a bench, because it's available. It's only going to make the movement better and more effective, stop you from wobbling around. So that's why I see the benefit of doing a seated press. I also usually like doing a bit of a more of a higher incline instead of just an upright bench as well, just because it gives someone something to dig their upper back into, and it's usually a bit of a safer position to press in, because most people are in a wee bit of a vulnerable position if they are doing, like, let's say a press completely upright on a bench. So I'm not the biggest fan of that. And next up, a good alternative to a standing press could be a shoulder press machine, could be a high incline Smith press, a high incline dumbbell press, barbell press, sorry. Any of those are a better alternative, and you'll be more stable. You can usually lift more and get more out of the movement and get more out of your delts, which is your shoulders. And lastly, I'm going to touch on a standing calf raise. So by standing calf raise, I mean when people do them like on a step up box. And the reason why I don't like them an awful lot in a step up box, yes, you might not have a leg press to do it on. That's kind of an exception, but you can maybe find a better movement to do. But with a standing calf raise on a step up box, again, balance is quite an issue, so it's going to be awkward to maintain the balance of being on the edge of the step up box, could tumble over for one, and as well as that, I just find it is quite awkward. Like, yes, you can do it and hold on to something with one hand and then hold on to a dumbbell or something with the other, but it can be quite hard to hold on to that dumbbell for the full duration if you don't have straps. It can be hard to balance even though you're holding on to something, and just progress the weight on it. Whereas if you do something like a leg press and just put the balls of your feet on the bottom of it, it can potentially be a better option. Or doing it single leg can be a bit of a better option, because it's usually easier to balance. You don't have to use as much weight, meaning you don't have to hold such a heavy dumbbell, which can be hard to balance with and a bit inconvenient. So yes, standing calf raises on a step up box, usually there is better options. Maybe even doing that with a step up box in a Smith machine if you have one. But like I said, usually all gyms have some sort of leg press, even if it's not an amazing one. Using the bottom of that can be a better option as well. And also, just on that note, something that sprung to my head is when you're doing a standing calf raise, not even on a step up box, just on the floor, again, a very poor exercise in my opinion, because you can't get a good stretch in your calves, you can't go down very deep, and yeah, put a lot of tension in them in that stretched position where we know we build muscle best. And it makes sense to use a large range of motion when we can. So like I don't see a benefit in choosing it where you can't get a good stretch in your calves and go further down, get a large range of motion, because there's not really any downside of doing so. Obviously a different story if you experience pain, that sort of thing, but usually I'd recommend doing it on something where you can stretch lower and you're not just got your balls of your feet on the ground, because you will not be getting very low at all. So yeah, I quite enjoyed making this episode and depicting some movements and talking about the pros and cons of each. I'll probably like to do this again because there's quite a lot of exercises that came to my head when it comes to ones that aren't the best or could potentially be better. So I'll look to do that in the future and do like a part 2, maybe even a part 3 on it, because yeah, again, it's an episode I like doing and enjoy talking about. So it makes sense for myself, just enjoyment wise, to do it, as well as thinking it's got a lot of benefit for you hearing it. So yeah, hope everyone has a great week. I appreciate everyone listening. If you did enjoy the episode, leave me a rating and review, give me a follow, and keep supporting the podcast. I greatly appreciate it. We're growing it well at the moment, and I can't thank you guys enough. So yeah, hope everyone has a great day and a great week.